At least 4 Israeli strikes hit Hara Tahrik municipality in Beirut's southern suburbs. The Palestinian death toll from Israel's onslaught climbs to more than 43,700. And a phone call between Russia's Putin and Germany's Scholz shows deep disagreements over Ukraine. It's 4 p.m. Cairo local time, and you're now watching Qnews. We begin today's bulletin with the latest developments in Lebanon.
كل المستهدفين هن مدنيين.
وضع شيء مرعب، شيء بخوف.
At least 4 Israeli strikes have hit Hara Tahrik municipality in Beirut's southern suburbs, sending dark clouds of smoke into the sky. The strikes came shortly after the Israeli occupation army issued a new call to evacuate the area. Since Tuesday, Israel has carried out several strikes on the city's southern suburbs. Repeated Israeli airstrikes on South Beirut have led to a mass exodus of civilians from the area. As Israeli strikes continue to hit Lebanon, local residents have voiced their frustration and grief over the toll on civilians. Israel has been launching airstrikes in the southern suburbs of Beirut, flattening buildings, and has stepped up its bombardment of the area this week. This escalation comes as U.S.-led diplomatic efforts towards a ceasefire appear to be gaining momentum. The Israeli occupation army has reported that approximately 35 rockets have been identified crossing from Lebanon into Israel's western Galilee area. The army added that sirens sounded this morning due to the projectiles, and some of the rockets were intercepted. It did not elaborate on the status of the other rockets. An Israeli drone has reportedly struck a civil defense team on the Arnaoun-Kafr Tibnit road in Lebanon's Nabateya governorate while they were conducting field work. The national news agency reported that initial information from the attack indicated that there were injuries among the paramedics. On Thursday, at least 12 medics were killed in an airstrike on a civil defense center in Lebanon's eastern Baalbek region. The Lebanese Health Ministry has reported that Israeli attacks on southern Lebanon have killed 2 paramedics. This comes as Beirut's southern suburb continues to be shelled for the 5th consecutive day. Raids also injured 4 others, with 2 paramedics missing. Lebanese authorities have not yet disclosed the total number of casualties from these assaults. Israeli aggression against Lebanon has intensified, with airstrikes, clashes, and humanitarian crises escalating across the region.
Israeli aggression against Lebanon continues to escalate, marking another day of intense conflict. Israeli airstrikes have heavily targeted the southern suburbs of Beirut, as well as areas in Bekaa and Mount Lebanon, causing widespread destruction and civilian casualties. In the south, fierce clashes persist as Israeli occupation forces attempt to infiltrate Lebanese border towns, including Aitaron, Tir Harfa, and Daira. Hezbollah has reportedly repelled these attempts and launched a series of rocket and drone strikes on Israeli military positions and settlements. These strikes resulted in forced evacuations in northern Israel. The Lebanese government is bolstering troop deployments in the south to counter Israeli incursions and protect civilian areas. Meanwhile, international responses remain limited. The United Nations has called for an immediate cessation of hostilities, and some countries have urged de-escalation, but a concrete resolution has yet to materialize. Lebanon's humanitarian crisis deepens as the destruction impacts critical infrastructure and medical services, leaving thousands of civilians in desperate need of aid.
For more analysis, we now move to Mark in our newsroom.
Thank you, Selma. To tell us more about the current situation in Lebanon, we're joined from Beirut by the strategic expert, Brigadier General Marcel Bologi. He's joining us now. Welcome to Q News. And let me start by asking you, how is Lebanon coping with the challenges posed by the destruction of infrastructure and the frequent power outages in many areas? I'll ask the question again. How is Lebanon coping with the challenges which are posed by the destruction and the infrastructure destruction and the frequent power outages in many areas?
Greetings, everyone. In fact, Lebanon is being pounded viciously because of the negotiations that are ongoing right now and for the agreement to be signed. And in fact, it is Netanyahu's policy to play with the time card, and to target the resistance targets because it is the incubating environment, because it is incubated by some civilian villages in Lebanon. They are pounding the expanse of 2 kilometers in Lebanon, and in fact this vicious aerial pounding is not really fruitful because the conditions for reaching a agreement is something quite challenging. And in fact, there has to be an international mechanism from the British and the French parties to be involved in the monitoring mechanisms. And so a negotiation is very difficult to be reached right now because we have 14 villages that are jeopardized to be damaged in the second phase of a pounding after a lot of villages were damaged in the first phase.
And how should warnings that have been issued to residents in Beirut's southern suburbs?
Right now, we are witnessing an escalation from both parties, both belligerent parties, because Israel didn't reach its goals, which is to get the Hezbollah forces to withdraw past the Litani line or demarcation line, and that didn't happen, and that's why the Israelis are escalating the pounding.
And Brigadier General, the repeated Israeli shelling on Lebanon's border areas and the hitting of the critical infrastructure, this is part of a deliberate strategy?
Of course. Israel is targeting Lebanese infrastructure. In the first phase, 22 villages over 22 kilometers, and in the second phase, 14 villages are projected to be damaged alongside the same extension or alongside 18 kilometers on the borders between Israel and Lebanon. And for that matter, we can see that Israel has a strategy to demolish the region that extends over the course of 110 kilometers between the borders of Israel and Lebanon. And in fact, they have this escalating or this escalation strategy, and they are just embodying it. And right now the resistance is trying to fight back in order to combat these intensive shelling operations. We see the Sheba farms and the 13 points between Lebanon and Syria. We find the population there resisting and trying to fight back because Netanyahu just wants to reach his goals before Christmas comes.
And looking to the future, what are the possible ways that this conflict could unfold?
In fact, the targets of Israel are regional, and this war is US-led. Though we have a lot of goals right now, normalization with Israel, and we see a lot of other files that are concurrent with the Lebanese subject. The Lebanese subject propagated by Iran is going to put a toll on the Lebanese people, and so we can project that this battle is going to extend over a long period of time.
Thank you very much. Strategic expert Brigadier General Marcel Bologgi, thank you very much for joining us here on Q News. And it's back to you, Selma.
Thank you so much, Mark, for conducting this interview. In Paris, now French special forces are attempting to free multiple hostages being held at a restaurant in the suburbs of Paris. The situation unfolded earlier today when the owner of the establishment took 4 individuals captive, prompting a swift response from law enforcement. As the authorities work to secure the release of the hostages, details surrounding the motive for the hostage-taking remain unclear. More details are still unfolding. Ladies and gentlemen, in Paris now, French special forces are attempting to free multiple hostages being held at a restaurant in the suburbs of Paris. The situation unfolded earlier today when the owner of the establishment took 4 individuals captive, prompting a swift response from law enforcement. As the authorities work to secure the release of the hostages, details surrounding the motive for the hostage-taking remain unclear. More details are still unfolding. Ladies and gentlemen, we continue to follow. The French special forces are attempting to free multiple hostages being held at a restaurant in the suburbs of Paris. The situation unfolded earlier today when the owner of the establishment took 4 individuals captive, prompting a swift response from law enforcement. As the authorities work to secure the release of the hostages, details surrounding the motive for the hostage-taking remain unclear. More details are still unfolding, and now back to Lebanon. The UN Security Council is set to hold a briefing session on Monday under the agenda item, The Situation in the Middle East, titled Ending the War and Securing a Lasting Peace, chaired by UK Foreign Secretary David Lammy. The Council is set to receive a briefing from the Special Coordinator for the Middle East Peace Process, Tor Wensland. The United Kingdom, which is chairing the Security Council this month, has prepared a concept note for Monday's session. The note emphasizes the importance of ending the war in the Gaza Strip and Lebanon, while also focusing on achieving broader regional stability through a resolution to the ongoing conflict. And now we move to the latest developments in Gaza. The Palestinian death toll from Israel's onslaught since October the 7th, 2023, has climbed to almost 43,800, with over 103,600 people injured. In the past 24 hours, the occupation forces have carried out 3 massacres against families in the Gaza Strip, according to medical sources. These attacks left at least 35 Palestinians dead and 111 others wounded. Three civilians have been killed and others have been injured in an Israeli occupation warplanes bombed a house in the Shaja'iyya neighborhood east of Gaza City. Medical sources reported that the occupation warplanes bombed a house belonging to the Samara family in the Shaja'iyya neighborhood east of Gaza City. Five civilians have been killed and others have been injured in the bombing of the Palestinian side of Rafah City, south of the Gaza Strip, by the Israeli occupation's warplanes. Medical sources reported that 3 young men were killed and others were injured when an occupation drone bombed a group of citizens in the Jneina area east of the Palestinian side of Rafah City. They added that 2 civilians were killed when they were targeted by the occupation's warplanes in the Khirbat al-Ads area north of the city. The Khan Yunis municipality in southern Gaza has announced it ran out of fuel to keep water and sewage facilities working. According to the municipality, basic services such as sanitation, waste collection, and transport are no longer in service, raising concerns about the spread of health hazards and disease among residents. The municipality added that the inability to operate water wells and desalination plants deprives more than 1.2 million residents of their basic rights to obtain clean water for drinking and other uses. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov has said that a phone call between Russian President Vladimir Putin and German Chancellor Olaf Scholz showed deep disagreements over Ukraine, but emphasized that the fact that they held the conversation was a positive development. After the first call between the two leaders in nearly 2 years, Peskov said that there were quite detailed discussions on the Ukrainian theme. Putin told Scholz any agreement to end the war in Ukraine must take Russian security interests into account and reflect new territorial realities.
Something in order to solve the Ukrainian crisis.
Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelenskyy has warned that German Chancellor Olaf Scholz's call with Vladimir Putin could open Pandora's box by undermining efforts to isolate the Russian leader. Zelenskyy said that this was Putin's intention all along and added that it's extremely important for him to lessen his isolation. A German government spokesperson said Chancellor Olaf Scholz demanded that Russian troops withdraw from Ukraine and that Russia show a willingness to negotiate a just and lasting peace. That brings us to the end of our news bulletin. Here's what we've been covering. At least 4 Israeli strikes hit Har al-Tahrik municipality in Beirut's southern suburbs. The Palestinian death toll from Israel's onslaught climbs to more than 43,700. And a phone call between Russia's Putin and Germany's Scholz shows deep disagreements over Ukraine. This concludes our news bulletin for the hour. Don't forget to follow Q News on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at Q News EG to stay informed. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more updates on Q News.